Raywat Deonandan at the University of Ottawa joining us this afternoon. Dr. Deonandan, thanks so much for your time.
It's my pleasure as always.
So we're hearing good things when it comes to Pfizer working on another vaccine. What are your thoughts on it, and what can you tell us about it?
Well, it's a Omicron-specific vaccine, much like Moderna's Omicron-specific vaccine. We call it a bivalent vaccine because it combines elements of the circulating strain of Omicron with the original Wuhan strain. So the idea is if you can better match the vaccine to the virus that's currently circulating, you get a better response. And their initial laboratory results show that you do get a better response in terms of more antibodies produced. So the idea is if that happens, you've got a much better chance at preventing actual infection and not just preventing hospitalization and death, which is what the current vaccines currently do. So the data looks good. The challenge, though, is by the time it's available in volume, sometime in late fall, will this be the same dominant circulating strain, or will the virus have mutated again? In which case you're shooting bullets at the target that just left.
And so you're saying, well, it could change by the time the fall comes, and we might be looking at a different variant than Omicron.
That's right. Now, I want to stress, though, that all the vaccines work to prevent serious disease. They all work to keep you out of the hospital and to keep you out of the morgue. The goal here is to prevent actual infection and transmission. That's what the Omicron-specific vaccine is supposed to do. And it does do that now. But again, we may just not be able to put it into the field quickly enough to outpace the virus's ability to mutate. So what we probably need is a new generation of vaccines, intranasal vaccines, and something called a pan-coronavirus vaccine, which accounts for all possible variants. They're working on that, and with any luck, we'll have that sometime next year, maybe, I hope. Cross your fingers.
What does the fall look like? Because I think, in a way, even talking about vaccines in the middle of summer, I'm thinking, I'm not too concerned about it. But I still have friends who are getting COVID. So what is the summer looking like, and then as we head into the fall?
I think we're looking down the barrel of a seventh wave. I think it's undeniable at this point. We have these new variants, B4 and B5, supplanting B2, which supplanted original Omicron, and they are much more transmissible and are better able at evading the vaccine immunity. So you're more likely to have breakthrough infections. Now again, the vaccines prevent hospitalization and death, so I don't think our hospitals and ICUs are going to get overwhelmed. I don't think our death rates are going to be increasing, but we're going to have challenges with people being sick all the time and staying out of work, and multiple reinfections is not good for your physiology, as we are learning with COVID. So there's going to be a challenge to keep people from getting reinfected, which is why it's important to get vaccinated and important to get boosted. So I'm advocating for people to seek out that secondary boost if you can get it, because that will, in the interim, help prevent actual infection and transmission.
And go back to that, because a number of people who I know who have had COVID are saying, well, now I have some natural immunity on top of the vaccine that I received, so why should I get another vaccine? Give us the argument.
It's unclear whether that is true. It's unclear whether infection with Omicron offers appreciable amounts of immunity. It seems that Omicron does not offer lasting immunity to those who are naturally infected. The previous variants might have. So vaccines are the only thing that does seem to offer that. Now, there's some evidence suggesting that people who are getting repeatedly reinfected are increasing their risk of hospitalization and death with each reinfection, which is kind of scary. So we want to prevent actual infection, not just hospitalization and death. So if you can get a fourth dose, the data out of Israel is pretty compelling. It shows that fourth doses increase the ability to prevent infection by a factor of 2, the ability to prevent serious disease by a strong factor, the ability to prevent hospitalization and death by 2, 3, 4, and 5 sometimes. So it's pretty clear that that fourth dose will give you that ability. And if you've got 3 doses, you're going to tolerate that fourth dose pretty well. So I wouldn't be concerned about safety issues. The safety signals are pretty compelling. So I don't know why here in Ontario, where I am, we're not rolling out fourth doses for everybody who wants them, as they are in Quebec. That seems to be the obvious thing we should be doing.
And the same thing in Alberta. It still is for just 70 plus who are receiving a fourth dose, and even then you see it's a bit of a slow uptake. Is it also the fact that a lot of people say, this is the summer, we know any kind of a flu season is in the fall, maybe I should just wait until September anyway?
That could be what's going on in people's minds. I think we failed in terms of the communications narrative of this disease. What's people are being told is that the pandemic is over. It's not over. What they're being told is that it's perfectly safe to continue doing what you're doing in 2019. That's not true. The cases are increasing. Absolutely, they are. Transmission is increasing. People are still getting sick. People are still being hospitalized, mostly the unvaccinated, and they're still dying, again, mostly the unvaccinated. So the crisis is still with us. So I think what we need is a better targeted education campaign and a normalization of people taking steps to protect themselves individually, like mask wearing when they're at a public indoor space and seeking third and fourth doses for themselves and their families.
What would your definition of a fully vaccinated Canadian be? Because that's also a sticking point when it comes to any kind of future mandates. It's often if you are fully vaccinated. What is fully vaccinated?
Yeah, very good question. It's definitely not 2 doses, first of all. And it comes down to what the intent is in making the definition. I think the intent should be preventing transmission, because I don't want to be sitting next to someone on an airplane, for example, who has not taken all the possible steps to reduce their likelihood of transmitting the virus. That means that person should be vaxxed to the max, as I call it, have received all of their eligible vaccines. So if you're from a province that allows you to take 3 and 4 doses, I hope you will have taken 3 and 4 doses, and that should be the definition of fully vaccinated. Now, if we care mostly about your ability to protect yourself and keep out of the hospital, then 3 doses, I think, is the appropriate definition here. You can probably get away with 2, but again, there's evidence that that ability is waning as well. We're looking, I think, at a future of regular boosting. The interval of that boosting is what's in question here, depending upon the quality of the vaccine. Will it be every 6 months or every year or every 2 years until the disease is finally at bay? But people need to get used to that idea that the vaccination boosting is going to be part of our future for a little bit.
I don't have young children. I know you do. What is the latest when it comes to vaccines for those under 5?
Well, the data out of Moderna and Pfizer shows that the vaccine for that age group is effective, depending upon how you want to define effective. It's anywhere between 37 and 50% effective in preventing symptomatic disease, which does not sound high, but it's better than 0. And it's probably much better at preventing hospitalization and death, because that's the lowest rung on the hierarchy, symptomatic disease. It's much easier for the vaccines to prevent hospitalization and death. And as a parent, that's what I most care about, keeping my kid out of the hospital and out of the morgue, right? So, and the way it's computed is via something called immunobridging, where you look at the amount of antibodies that the inoculation produces, and you do a hand-waving statistical argument to saying, well, this is comparable to adults, therefore we think this has an efficacy of X%. The actual trials looking at the number of people who got sick versus those who didn't wasn't completed because the sample size isn't large enough, frankly. So we have to trust that that immunobridging technique is accurate. As a parent, though, I am eager to get my kid that shot. Even if the advantage is small, it's better than 0. And I think there's a very good chance that it will prevent my child from being seriously sick, which is what I mostly care about.
I know I haven't checked my text line. I'll do that after this conversation. But I know I'll have people say, but why be concerned about those under 5? The symptoms aren't as severe. They don't end up in hospital. The mortality rate is very low. What's your argument?
Several things. One, mortality isn't all we care about. We care about, obviously, hospitalization. And while the probability of any one child being hospitalized is small, Omicron being so incredibly contagious is putting a record number of kids in the hospital. The rate of pediatric hospitalizations in the USA is 4 times that what it was for the Delta era. So Omicron is no joke. 2 is, as I mentioned earlier, we don't want to be repeatedly infecting our children. There is compelling evidence that repeated infections is doing damage to multiple organ systems, and it may take years for that to manifest. I don't want to find out years from now that my child has suffered brain damage because I allowed him to be infected several times. So any advantage I can give in preventing that likelihood, I will take.
Dr. Deonandan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan, epidemiologist.